I want you to picture um, a highly specific but universally miserable scenario. You are sitting in absolute gridlock traffic.
Oh, the absolute worst.
Right. The sky outside your windshield is this like dull, oppressive gray. Maybe it's even sleeting a little bit. Your commute has moved roughly 12 feet in the last 20 minutes, and you're just staring at the glowing red taillights of the sedan right in front of you.
Yeah, that specific urban despair.
Exactly. And in that exact moment, your mind just instinctively drifts to the ultimate travel fantasy. You pull out your phone, you open up your social media feeds, and the algorithm, well, it knows exactly what you need.
It always does. It feeds you that perfectly curated, high-definition dream.
Yeah, a pristine, car-free island. Crystal clear turquoise water just gently lapping against flawless white sand. No engines, no sirens, no exhaust fumes.
Just the sound of the wind, maybe a drinking coconut in your hand, and absolute off-the-grid liberation.
Right. It is the perfect manufactured escape from modern life.
And it is an incredibly potent fantasy. I mean, it's engineered so perfectly that it successfully drives millions of people to empty their savings accounts and book flights halfway across the planet every single year.
Which brings us to the core mission of our deep dives today. We are pulling back the curtain on that exact specific fantasy.
Yes, we are.
We're digging into a massive stack of recent intelligence.
Uh-huh.
Specifically, this extensive, highly detailed 2026 travel and infrastructure analysis breaking down the living, breathing reality of the Gili Islands in Indonesia.
And the goal here is to bridge that massive canyon-sized gap between the eco-conscious backpacker paradise that's aggressively marketed to you on a glowing screen
Right.
and the stark, uncompromising, deeply complex logistical reality of actually stepping foot on those sandbars in 2026.
Because, being well-informed isn't just about knowing where to go.
No, not at all. It's about understanding the actual mechanics of a place before you arrive. I mean, if you are going to commit your hard-earned money and burn through your precious annual leave, you really need to look past the filtered aesthetic.
You need the unvarnished mechanics of how these islands actually operate.
Oh.
So, okay, let's unpack this, because I want to be super clear right up front. We are not doing this to kill your travel dreams.
No, definitely not.
Think of this deep dive as like a survival toolkit.
Hmm.
Over the course of our time today, we're going to map out the hidden cartels that essentially run the island logistics.
We're going to explore the severe, largely invisible infrastructure collapse happening right beneath the feet of luxury tourists.
Yeah, and we'll break down the exact weather traps and systemic failures that catch thousands of people entirely off guard.
And ultimately deliver a rigorous, data-backed verdict on whether this destination actually makes sense for you.
Based on how you travel, of course.
Yeah.
So it's a fascinating case study in rapid gentrification and environmental strain. Let's start at the very beginning of the timeline.
Right, so you've booked the ticket, you've chased the dream, you've survived the brutal long-haul flight to Indonesia.
The jet lag is real.
Oh, it's brutal. And you are finally arriving at the gateway to the Gilis. And to get there, most people have to pass through Bangsal Harbor on the mainland of Lombok.
And just looking through the accounts in our research, this place is an absolute gauntlet.
That's putting it mildly.
You step out of your air-conditioned taxi, expecting ocean breezes, and you are immediately hit with this heavy, suffocating wall of diesel fumes mixed with the smell of raw baking fish.
Yeah, the sensory shock is immediate.
And before your brain can even process the environment, the very first financial trap springs.
The Porter microeconomy.
It is wild. The analysis details this perfectly. You pop the trunk of your car, and before your hand even touches your own luggage,
They just grab it.
literally, a porter will physically grab your bags. They don't ask. They don't offer service. They just take the bag, carry it maybe 20 meters to the ticket office, drop it on the dirt, and aggressively demand 100,000 Indonesian rupiah.
Which is about $6.50 USD. Forcefully extracted from you within 3 minutes of your arrival.
Which, I mean, is a brilliant piece of behavioral economics on their part, honestly.
Oh, absolutely. They prey entirely on your disorientation. You're exhausted, you don't fully grasp the currency conversion yet, and you really don't want to cause a scene in a foreign harbor.
Right, you just want to get to the boat.
Exactly. But to put that $6.50 into perspective regarding the local economy, which we will dissect in depth later, that is the exact cost of an entire freshly cooked dinner for 2 people at a local inland warung.
Wow. 2 full dinners for carrying a bag 20 feet.
Yep. But you just pay it because you want the friction to end.
Right, but that is just the appetizer for the main event. Let's fast forward a bit. You get on the boat, you cross the water, and you arrive on the island. Let's talk about the Sidomo cartel and the great no-car illusion.
Ah, yes. Because this is where the eco-fantasy violently collides with the economic reality.
What's fascinating here is how a genuinely positive environmental policy, a complete ban on motorized vehicles,
Mm.
has been effectively weaponized into an economic monopoly.
Right. The zero motorized vehicle rule is universally marketed as this beautiful, serene, eco-friendly dream.
But the reality on the ground is that it has created a total unbreakable syndicate controlling your physical movement.
Okay, wait. Let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
I'm looking at these numbers. They are charging 250,000 rupiah, that's $16.50 USD for a 10-minute ride and a horse cart.
That's steep.
If they have a total monopoly and the margins are that insane, why hasn't some outside company or even a clever local entrepreneur just brought over a fleet of silent electric golf carts or motorized cargo bikes to undercut them?
I mean, the emissions are still zero. It fits
Uh,
the eco-mandate perfectly.
That is the exact logical leap a Western traveler makes, assuming a free market. But you're missing the political reality of local syndicates.
The politics.
Right. The horse cart operators, known locally as Sodomos, are deeply entrenched in the village political structure. They aren't just independent drivers, they operate as a unified cooperative with immense lobbying power over the local island chiefs.
So they protect their turf.
Fiercely, any attempt to introduce electric golf carts or sweeping infrastructural changes that threaten their livelihood is immediately blocked, sometimes through outright physical blockades at the harbor.
Wow.
Yeah. They protect their monopoly because it is the primary economic engine for hundreds of local families.
So you are basically walking into a beautifully preserved mafia. You get off the boat on Gili Islands. You have a massive rolling suitcase. Your hotel is a 20-minute walk away.
You're sweating.
Sweating buckets. You walk up to a driver expecting a standard Southeast Asian negotiation. He quotes you the $16.50. You try to haggle. He just stares at you.
And if you threaten to walk away and ask the next driver,
Let me guess, the next driver says the same thing.
the next driver has already heard the quote and will give you the exact same price. There is absolutely no undercutting.
And here is the absurdity of that price point that just blows my mind.
Oh.
Looking at the broader Indonesian travel data, $16.50 is the exact same amount of money it costs to rent a motorized, reliable scooter for 3 full days over on mainland Bali.
3 whole days.
3 entire days of total autonomous freedom across hundreds of kilometers versus a bumpy 10-minute cart ride behind an exhausted horse just to move your suitcase to a lobby.
The psychological toll of this moment is profound. Picture the vulnerability of the traveler here. You are exhausted. You are standing in blazing heat. You try to be stubborn.
Oh, I totally try to be stubborn.
Exactly. You decide to drag the bag yourself to prove a point. But the moment you step off the harbor concrete, the wheels of your hard-shell suitcase sink entirely into the fine, unpaved dust and sand.
No.
You are physically stuck, and the cart drivers know this. They just sit in the shade, smoking, refusing to drop the price by a single rupiah because they know gravity and friction are on their side.
You are a captive market.
Completely.
It's the ultimate brutal welcome to paradise. But digging through the logistics data, there is a very clear, actionable workaround here.
Let's hear the hack.
First, the most obvious structural fix. Do not pack a hard-shell roller case for a sandbar. Pack a travel backpack. If you carry your own weight, you strip the syndicate of their leverage entirely.
That makes total sense.
But let's say you're traveling heavy and you absolutely must bring a roller case. The move is to contact your mid-range or luxury hotel at least 3 days before you arrive.
Okay.
You demand that they send their own staff down to the harbor with a specialized fact-hire cargo bicycle to collect your bags. Most reputable properties have these bikes specifically to bypass the cartel for their guests.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, but they won't deploy them unless you arrange it in advance.
That is a crucial logistical hack, because once you navigate that initial arrival extortion, your brain actually goes through a very specific, well-documented psychological adjustment period over the next 24 hours.
Yes, the 24-hour emotional arc. This is one of the most interesting behavioral patterns of the research. You finally get to your room, you drop your bags, but beneath the surface of that first sunset beer, the physical island around you is quietly buckling.
It really is.
Break down that first day for us.
It's a fascinating psychological transition that almost every visitor experiences. Hours 1 through 3 are pure euphoria.
The honeymoon phase.
Exactly. You've unpacked, you walk out to the beach. The water is that impossible, vibrant shade of turquoise. There are no cars anywhere. It feels like absolute liberation. You are convinced you have made the greatest travel decision of your life.
But then the adrenaline wears off, and reality starts creeping in. Hours 4 through 8, the logistical friction hits.
Right.
You realize that because there are no cars, everything is incredibly far apart. Your resort might be 2 kilometers from the main restaurant hub.
Which is a long walk in the sand.
Yeah. If you want to go anywhere for dinner, you either have to walk in the sweltering heat in the dark, or you have to pay the cartel again.
Then, hours 9 through 14 deliver the financial shock. You finally make it to a beachfront club, you sit down for a burger and a local bintang beer, and you look at the menu.
And you just gasp.
Yeah, you realize you are looking at London or Sydney price points. And when the bill arrives, a mandatory 21% government tax and service charge has been quietly added to the total.
Which perfectly tees up hours 15 through 24. The recalibration. This is the moment of acceptance.
You just give in.
You abandon the overpriced beachfront, you start walking inland, you find a local eatery, and you finally surrender to what the research calls island pacing.
But you know, this recalibration isn't just about managing your wallet or your walking speed. It's about recognizing the severe infrastructure reality of the environment you are standing on.
The hidden stuff.
Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, these tiny sandbars are currently trying to support up to 15,000 daily visitors during peak season. The sheer weight of that human presence is completely fracturing the foundational systems of the islands.
Like, pull the thread on that, starting with the power grid. Because this is something the luxury brochures deliberately omit. Paying 5-star resort prices does not exempt you from third-world grid failures.
Not at all.
What actually happens to the electrical infrastructure when crowd density hits 100% in July and August?
It's a matter of simple physics and peak demand. When 15,000 tourists return to their rooms after a day at the beach and all turn on their air conditioning units at the exact same time.
Oh boy.
Yeah, the sudden spike in electrical draw completely exceeds the capacity of the aging underwater power cables that run from the mainland of Lombok.
So what happens?
The local government has no choice but to initiate scheduled, rolling blackouts to prevent a total grid meltdown. These blackouts can last up to 6 hours every single day.
6 hours.
Yep. If your accommodation doesn't have a massive industrial backup generator roaring in the background, and a lot of boutique places do not, you are simply sitting in a dark, stifling room sweating.
And if the power grid is failing, you know the water situation is even more precarious. The municipal water grids regularly depressurize or fail entirely.
It's a huge issue.
You have travelers paying premium resort rates upwards of $300 a night who find themselves forced to take bucket showers using unpurified groundwater.
Which is just jarring.
And we have to highlight a massive glaring red flag from the 2026 infrastructure reports. Gili Islands.
Yes. The freshwater infrastructure on Gili Islands experienced a total systemic collapse in late 2024.
How does that even happen? Like, how does an entire island just run out of water?
It comes down to the mechanics of island water tables. Underneath these islands is a fragile lens of fresh water that floats above the denser saltwater.
Okay, makes sense.
When you have unchecked development and thousands of tourists demanding multiple showers a day, you over-extract from that aquifer. Eventually, the saltwater intrudes.
Oh, it mixes.
Exactly. Once the ocean breaches the aquifer, the well water becomes irreparably salty. And the local desalination plants, which are incredibly energy intensive, frequently break down due to the power grid issues we just discussed.
So they're literally trapped in a negative feedback loop. The power fails, which kills the desalination plant, which means no water.
Exactly.
So how are they sustaining luxury tourism on Milaneno right now?
Incredibly inefficiently, they are forced to truck fresh water in by boat from Lombok every single day.
Bye, babe.
Imagine the logistics of loading thousands of liters of water into massive plastic bladders, putting them on wooden boats, navigating ocean swells, and then pumping that water into hotel-holding tanks.
That sounds insanely expensive.
It is an astronomical logistical undertaking that only adds to the environmental strain and drives up the baseline cost of everything on the island.
Which leads directly into the most visceral issue in the data. The waste management crisis. The trash island reality.
Yeah, this is grim.
This is the part of the deep dive that will never, ever make it onto a travel influencer's feed. If you walk just 2 streets back from those pristine 5-star beachfront resorts, you are confronted with vast, smoldering open-air trash-burning pits.
That is the direct, unavoidable consequence of the no motorized vehicles policy. If you ban trucks, you ban municipal garbage trucks.
Wow. I hadn't connected those dots.
Exactly. You cannot move the sheer tonnage of waste generated by 15,000 daily consumers using horse carts.
It's just too much volume.
There is literally nowhere else to put the garbage and no efficient way to transport it to the mainland. So the local population is forced to burn it in the interior of the islands.
It creates this intense, jarring sensory clash. If you are standing on the beachfront, the olfactory profile is coconut sunscreen, salty ocean air, and maybe the faint smell of stale beer from a beach club.
Classic vacation smells.
But the moment you walk 50 meters inland, the profile shifts violently. You are suddenly smelling dense wood smoke, the acrid chemical burn of melting plastic, and frying garlic from the local kitchens.
And the auditory experience is equally chaotic. It is a constant frequency war. These are conservative Islamic islands, so 5 times a day you have the heavy, distorted amplification of the mosque speakers carrying across the entire island.
Right.
And this is directly competing with aggressive, four-to-the-floor techno music pumping out of the beach clubs until the early hours of the morning. The acoustic environment is completely saturated. It is never truly quiet.
Okay, so we've established that the underlying physical infrastructure is crumbling under the weight of tourism. But that's not just an inconvenience for your shower pressure or your peace of mind.
No, it has real consequences.
That crumbling infrastructure creates high-stakes logistical minefields that can literally trap you on the island or completely vaporize your travel budget. Let's dig into the boat logistics.
Ah, the fast boat roulette.
The fast boat roulette. So earlier we discussed the absolute nightmare of Bangsal Harbor on Lombok. The heavily marketed alternative to avoid that gauntlet is taking a direct fast boat from Padang Bai over on the mainland of Bali.
Right.
It costs about 600,000 rupiah, which is roughly $40 USD. On paper, it sounds perfect. You skip Lombok Mafia entirely and zip straight to the islands.
The catch is the physical reality of the boarding process at Padang Bai. There is no proper modern pier for these fast boats.
So how do you get on?
You are forced to carry your own heavy luggage, wading through thigh-high ocean surf, trying to maintain your balance on a slippery metal ladder while simultaneously climbing onto the back of a violently pitching fiberglass hull.
That sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. And that's assuming the boat actually gets clearance to leave.
Yes.
Let's walk through the extortion trap, detailed in the reports. You go online, you book a cheap open-deck transfer to save a few bucks, you show up at the beach at 7 a.m., you're sweating, your pants are wet from the surf, you are ready to go.
And then?
And the budget operator casually walks up to you and says, "Sorry, the harbor master canceled our boats today due to volatile weather and ocean swell."
And when you, the logical consumer, ask for a refund for a service they cannot provide.
They outright refuse. They just shake their heads.
Yeah.
And instead of helping you, they point you to a larger, heavier ferry operator stationed right next door.
Let me guess, who is charging double?
Yes. An operator who magically has clearance from the exact same harbor master to sail and who is charging double the price for a seat. You instantly lose your initial $40 and you are backed into a corner where you are forced to pay an $80 ransom just to salvage your non-refundable hotel booking on the island. It is a highly coordinated systemic shakedown.
This is deeply tied to the meteorological data of the region. The monsoon season from December through February brings up to 300 millimeters of rain a month.
That's a lot of rain.
It is. This weather volatility, the massive ocean swells in the Lombok Strait, is what gives the local harbor master the legal authority to ground these lighter boats for up to 4 days at a time.
And I want to pause here and reframe how people usually think about rain on a tropical vacation. When you tell someone it's going to rain, they think, oh, I'll just sit at a beach bar with a book and watch the storm. No big deal.
Right. Getting rained on is not the issue here.
The catastrophic issue is that you are trapped on a sandbar with zero airport infrastructure. If the ocean is too rough for any boat to legally cross the strait, you are physically marooned. The real danger is missing your multi-thousand-dollar international flight out of the Bali airport because you literally cannot get off the island.
The stakes are incredibly high, and budget travelers frequently miscalculate that risk.
Exactly. So, how do we hack this? The supply chain analysis is uncompromising on this point. You must only book your transfers with premium operators. The research specifically names Blue Water Express or Gili Getaway.
Which cost more, obviously.
Yes, you pay a significant premium up front. Why? Because you aren't just paying for a nicer seat. You are paying for larger, fully compliant, heavier vessels that can safely navigate larger swells and are rarely grounded by the harbor master.
That peace of mind is worth it.
And Crucially, if a legitimate red flag maritime weather event does force a cancellation, these premium companies actually possess the corporate infrastructure to process your refund to your credit card.
It's a perfect microcosm of travel economics, you know. Trying to save $20 on a budget boat can easily end up costing you hundreds of dollars in ransom fares or thousands of dollars in a missed international flight.
But the ocean isn't the only thing that can strand you. We need to talk about the Friday night ATM desert. When I read this part of the logistics report, my jaw dropped.
It is a fascinating study in the fragility of off-grid banking. Let's break down the physical cash flow mechanics of the island. Every Friday afternoon, a massive wave of weekend tourists and expats arrives from Bali and Lombok.
Ready to party.
Exactly. They step off the boats and immediately hit the centralized ATMs to pull out cash for the weekend's parties and dinners. By Friday evening, the physical machines are completely drained of paper currency.
And here's the systemic failure. The physical armored bank boats that bring the heavily guarded cash refills from the central banks in Lombok do not operate on the weekends.
Exactly. The maritime insurance premiums and the overtime costs for armed guards to move literal millions in cash across a volatile ocean strait on a Saturday are too high for the local banks to justify.
So they just leave them empty.
So the cash machines will remain completely empty until the banking boats resume operations on Monday morning. This completely paralyzes anyone who relies on an ATM to pay for their daily existence.
Put yourself in this nightmare scenario. You're sitting at a cash-only local warung. You've just finished an incredible grilled fish dinner. The bill comes.
Yeah.
You casually walk to the nearest ATM, and the screen just flashes out of service.
Oh, the panic.
You walk to the next one. Blank screen. You realize you have zero cash. You have to walk back to the restaurant, explain the situation through a language barrier, leave your actual physical government passport as collateral with the owner,
Which is terrifying.
and spend 2 hours cycling around the pitch-dark interior of the island, desperately trying to find a black market money changer who will wildly overcharge your credit card just to give you enough physical rupiah to go back and buy your freedom.
It is entirely panic-inducing. The actionable fix here has to be an absolute rule for anyone visiting. You must withdraw your entire trip's cash budget at a bare minimum 3 mels in rupiah, which is about $200 USD, while you are still physically standing on the paved streets of mainland Bali or Lombok.
Never rely on the island.
Never, ever rely on the island's banking infrastructure for your liquidity.
Now, if you are utterly stuck, there is an emergency hack buried in the data. Some of the larger international dive centers have card terminals.
Right.
If you plead your case, they will sometimes let you overcharge your credit card as a phantom dive lesson and hand you the difference in cash from their safe. But they will hit you with a massive 10% to 15% fee for the privilege. Just bring the cash.
So synthesizing all of these macro threats, the arrival cartels, the fragile power and water grids, the unpredictable boat logistics, the cash shortages, how do you actually mitigate them?
All about where you stay, right?
Exactly. The answer completely depends on your understanding of the geography. We are dealing with a tale of 3 distinct islands, and choosing the right one is arguably the most consequential decision of your trip.
Let's map them out geographically and demographically. Island number 1, the largest. Gili Islands. The research categorizes this as the heavy energy zone.
Can they mean heavy?
This single island absorbs 70% of all visitors to the Gilis. The East Coast, right where the fast boats dock, is operating at 150% capacity from midday to midnight. It is a dense, overwhelming wall of aggressive touts, massive speakers, and intensely congested bicycle traffic.
It caters almost exclusively to young backpackers, large group tours, and heavily party-focused demographics.
The economics here are completely fractured. You can get a bunk in a mega hostel dorm like my mate's place for 150,000 rupiah, about $10 USD. A mid-range boutique spot like Pearl of Troingen is around $100, and sprawling luxury estates like Pondok Santi will run you $300 a night.
A huge range.
But there is a very specific acoustic warning for Troingen that you must check before booking. If you book accommodation anywhere near the central village mosque, you need to know that the surrounding buildings entirely lack modern soundproofing.
Yeah, that's a rough wake-up call.
The 4:30 a.m. call to prayer is heavily amplified through massive PA speakers and will be broadcast essentially directly into your bedroom window. It is not subtle.
Which brings us to the second island in the chain, Gili Air. The analysis categorizes this as the compromise zone. The demographic here shifts noticeably.
Who's going to air?
You see couples, slightly older travelers, and digital nomads. These are people who want to have a high-quality dinner and a cocktail without a massive, thumping foam party happening next door.
It's also noticeably cheaper across the board. The data shows it runs about 15% cheaper than Trawangan for comparable services. A dorm bed at Begadang is $12. A solid mid-range room at Pink Coco is $80. And a luxury stay at Slowville is $200.
Sounds perfect, right?
It sounds like the perfect balance. But what is the specific geographic warning for air?
You have to understand the lunar and tidal mechanics of the region. The eastern beach of Gili suffers from massive, dramatic tidal retreats.
What does that mean for swimming?
Because of the shallow shelf, for half the day, the ocean water pulls back hundreds of meters. It doesn't leave behind a nice sandy beach. It leaves behind a massive expanse of incredibly sharp, dead coral rubble. It makes ocean swimming physically dangerous, if not impossible, until the tide fully returns hours later.
And finally, we have island number 3, Gili, the isolation zone.
This island is largely undeveloped by comparison. The infrastructure footprint is minimal. It is intensely quiet, pitch black at night, and geared almost strictly toward honeymooners seeking total privacy.
So no foam parties here.
The bustling backpacker infrastructure of hostels and cheap bars barely exists here.
A basic homestay with a local family is about $16. A mid-range beachfront room at Seri Resort is $60. And luxury glamping at Karma Reef is $230. But we have to aggressively reiterate the massive specific warning for Mana that we broke down earlier.
Yeah.
The total freshwater infrastructure collapse.
Yeah.
If you stay here, you are relying entirely on trucked-in water supplies, or you are showering in salty tap water.
So we have a fascinating debate emerging from the research. If we look at the consensus of the travel data, there is a clear division on which island actually provides the superior experience. The general consensus leans heavily toward Gili Air.
Makes sense.
The math simply makes sense. You get the high-quality cafes, the diverse restaurants, and the relatively reliable power grid of Trawangan, but you subtract the chaotic noise and the party mobs, all while securing a 15% discount.
There is a deeply contrarian view buried in the qualitative research, and I honestly kind of love it.
Oh, the Mino purists.
Yes. The argument is that Gili is the only choice if you want the actual, authentic, unplugged island experience that you originally set out to find. The counter-argument to Gili Air is basically this. If your goal was to sit in a crowded, air-conditioned cafe eating a $12 avocado toast while answering emails, you should have just stayed in mainland Bali.
That's a fair point.
Mino's lack of infrastructure is a feature, not a bug.
Yeah.
It forces you to put your glowing screen down, sit in the sand, and just watch the ocean.
What's fascinating about that perspective is how that $12 avocado toast perfectly illustrates the bizarre economic reality of these islands. It brings us to the concept of the two-tier economy. How much does surviving or actually thriving cost here in 2026?
It is a completely bifurcated economic system. You have the Western track and the local track running parallel to each other, often separated by just a few feet of sand.
Let's look at the Western track first.
Okay.
This is your beachfront beach clubs, your vegan smoothie bowl cafes, your high-end espresso bars. They cater 100% to foreign tourists, and they operate at strict, uncompromising European price points. You are easily looking at $20 to $40 USD per person for a single meal.
And we have to analyze what you are actually paying for at that price point. You are paying a massive premium purely for the real estate, the ocean view. Because the culinary reality is that the food itself is largely imported. That salmon or that beef has likely traveled in a cooler on the deck of a hot ferry for 3 hours from the mainland just to get to your plate.
Exactly. You are paying for the transport logistics, not necessarily the freshness. But if you turn your back to the ocean and walk just 3 unpaved streets inland, you hit the local track.
To the real economy.
These are family-run warungs operating literally out of people's front living rooms. You have the local night market. The prices are staggering in comparison. A massive, beautiful mixed rice plate, nasi campur, is $2.30. A freshly caught, whole grilled snapper is $6.50.
It's entirely a proximity tax.
That is the perfect way to frame it. Let's look at a coconut. A whole, fresh drinking coconut is $2 at the inland night market.
Okay.
If you take that exact same coconut, walk 200 meters down the dirt path, and hand it to a bartender at a beach club, the price jumps 400%. You are paying a 400% tax for the privilege of looking at the water while you drink it.
Beyond the restaurants, we also have to look at the macroeconomics of the supermarket duopoly. Alphamart and Indomaret. These are standard, brightly lit convenience stores. But on the Gilis, they serve a critical, almost infrastructural function. They're the only public spaces with guaranteed, blasting, reliable air conditioning.
They're absolute oases. People will just stand in the aisles pretending to read labels just to cool down.
I've totally done that.
Oh, we all have. And they regulate the baseline pricing for survival goods. A six-pack of large water bottles is $3. A large local bintang beer is $3. Every single smart traveler buys their daily water here because the hotel minibars will mark those exact same items up by 300%.
But there is a massive, budget-destroying surprise hiding on the shelves of these supermarkets.
Sunscreen.
Sunscreen. This blew my mind.
Yeah.
A standard 100-milliliter bottle of Western brand SPF 50 sunscreen will cost you 250,000 rupiah.
It's a robbery.
That is $16.50 USD for a tiny travel-sized bottle of sunscreen. Why is it so astronomical?
It's a perfect storm of supply chain markup. First, you have Indonesia's heavy import luxury taxes on foreign cosmetics. Then you have the distributor's cut in Bali.
Okay, that makes sense.
Then you have the cargo space fee to get it on the fast boat. Then you have the local cartel transport fee to move it from the harbor to the store.
Wow, it just stacks up.
And finally, you have the Indo-Marit monopoly markup because they know if you are sunburned on an island near the equator, you will pay whatever they ask. You absolutely must bring your SPF from home.
So if we synthesize all these systemic costs, the cartel transport, the imported food, the essential supplies, we can build out the daily budget personas. What does it actually cost per day to exist here? Let's start with the survivalist persona.
The data suggests the absolute floor for the survivalist is about 23 USD a day. But we need to be clear about the physical toll of that budget.
It sounds miserable, honestly. It is a highly restricted existence. You are walking absolutely everywhere in 90-degree blazing heat because a $3.30 daily bicycle rental eats too much of your daily allowance. You are eating strictly at the inland warongs. Your entertainment consists of lying on the free public beach drinking supermarket water. It is a highly functional way to travel, but physically and mentally, it is exhausting.
Stepping up from that, we have the comfort traveler. This requires a capital deployment of between $100 and $160 USD a day. Economically, this is the sweet spot of the island.
What does that get you?
This budget secures accommodation with a reliable backup generator, so your air conditioning actually works during the blackouts. It includes breakfast, and crucially, it covers a daily bicycle rental so you aren't completely drained of energy by noon.
And the specific discretionary spend that makes this tier worth it? Having the budget to book a private glass-bottom boat charter for snorkeling, so you don't have to fight for your life on the massive public boats. We'll get to the absolute chaos of the snorkeling mobs in a second.
Finally, we analyze the splurger persona. This is an expenditure of $300 or more a day. You are booking private pool villas and getting daily beachfront spa treatments. But the systemic analysis here is definitive. The premium is simply not justified by the reality of the destination.
No, it's not. It's a bad ROI. You are paying 5-star prices for 3-star execution.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not the fault of the local staff. They're incredibly hardworking. It's that the luxury service standard just cannot compete with what you get on mainland Bali for the exact same money, simply because the logistics of running a flawless 5-star hotel without motorized transport, a reliable power grid, or consistent municipal water are physically impossible.
Which transitions us perfectly into perhaps the most critical area of our analysis, managing your physical safety and your cultural footprint in this highly specific, constrained environment.
Let's get real about the physical risks. Because when people read travel warnings, their minds immediately go to violent crime or muggings.
Yeah.
But looking at the safety data, violent crime here is incredibly statistically rare. You are generally very safe walking around.
The actual statistical dangers are environmental and systemic. The #1 real physical risk documented on these islands is severe methanol poisoning.
This is genuinely terrifying. We're talking about unregulated, locally distilled spirits, often called arak, being quietly poured into empty branded bottles of imported vodka or gin at cheap beach bars.
It's so dangerous.
It puts dozens of tourists in the local clinics or hospitals every single year. Why does this happen?
It comes back to macroeconomics. Indonesia places massive import tariffs on foreign alcohol. A bottle of cheap Western vodka that costs $15 in the U.S. might cost $50 wholesale in Indonesia.
Right.
To maintain high profit margins while offering 2-for-1 happy hour deals, unscrupulous bars will cut the expensive liquor with incredibly cheap, improperly distilled local alcohol, which often contains lethal levels of methanol.
The rule is absolute. You have to be incredibly careful about drinking cheap cocktails or mixed spirits on these islands. If the price seems too good to be true, it is. Stick to factory-sealed bintang beers or strictly high-end, reputable establishments.
Another major environmental risk is catastrophic reef infections. The ocean water near the populated coastlines isn't sterile. It is heavily mixed with agricultural and septic runoff.
Yikes.
A small, seemingly harmless scrape on a piece of dead coral can escalate into a severe staph infection incredibly rapidly in the tropical heat. Add to that the fact that dengue fever is endemic to the region, especially during the wet season, which is why that high-deep mosquito spray you bought locally is a non-negotiable essential.
And we touched on this earlier, but it bears repeating with absolute clarity.
Yeah.
The tap water is toxic. You cannot even safely use it to brush your teeth. It is often just slightly desalinated, brackish groundwater directly mixed with septic runoff.
This systemic fragility raises a critical question about the medical infrastructure. If you experience one of these severe issues, a reef infection, methanol poisoning, or a severe accident, what are your actual options?
And the answer is pretty bleak.
The answer is they are highly dangerously limited. There are no world-class medical facilities on the islands. The local government clinic, known as the Pesquesmas, is equipped to handle basic stitches, minor cuts, or severe dehydration via IV fluids. But if you have complex physical trauma or an escalating internal infection,
You're looking at chartering a private speedboat in the middle of the night to mainland Lombok, or, in a worst-case scenario, coordinating a $15,000 USD private helicopter evacuation directly to the BIMC Trauma Hospital in Bali.
that's a massive expense.
That is the stark reality of being genuinely off the grid. If things go wrong, they go wrong fast.
Beyond physical safety, we must address the reality of cultural friction. It is easy to forget when you're sitting at a vegan cafe, but these are conservative Muslim islands. There is a deeply ingrained local culture that tourists, unfortunately, often blindly trample over.
Yes, the cultural reports highlight a few massive recurring faux pas. First is dress code. Walking through the inland village streets away from the immediate beachfront in just a string bikini or board shorts is considered massively disrespectful to the residents who actually live, work, and worship there.
It takes zero effort to throw a shirt or a sarong on when you leave the sand.
The second major issue is the interaction with the local marine wildlife, specifically touching or chasing the sea turtles. Not only does it carry a massive social stigma within the local dive community, but it also brings heavy enforced financial fines if you are caught harassing the animals by local marine authorities or dive masters.
And then there's a cultural concept of jam carrot.
Rubber time.
Rubber time. I find this concept so interesting because Westerners completely misinterpret it as laziness. If you go to a local warung, sit down and order a meal, it is going to take exactly as long as it takes.
Right.
The food is cooked to order by a family. If you show impatience, if you tap your watch, if you snap your fingers or complain to the server about the wait, you don't get your food faster. You guarantee that you will get significantly worse service.
Because you have broken the social contract. In Indonesian culture, jam carrot reflects a temporal philosophy where maintaining social harmony and relational peace is vastly more important than mechanical efficiency. By acting impatiently, you are introducing aggressive, disruptive energy into their space. You have to actively adjust your internal, hyper-optimized clock to island time.
We also need to address the stark realities for specific traveler demographics. Because the marketing says these islands are for everyone, they are not. Let's talk about solo female travelers.
Okay.
While violent crime is rare, navigating the dark, unpaved interior paths of Gili Trawangan at 2 a.m. after the bars close is highly unadvised. There is a complete lack of municipal streetlights, and the aggressive packs of territorial stray dogs are a legitimate physical hazard in the dark.
And we have to look at the data regarding families. If you are traveling with toddlers or infants, you genuinely need to reconsider this destination. Think about the physical logistics.
It's a nightmare for parents.
You are trying to push a wheeled stroller through deep, unpaved sand in 90-degree heat while constantly dodging massive piles of horse manure and aggressive, speeding bicycle traffic. It will completely destroy your sanity within the first hour of arrival.
So we've broken down the harsh mechanical realities. Let's pivot and look at the Instagram versus reality dynamic. Because the gap between the curated aesthetic and the physical experience is where the most profound travel disappointments happen. But according to our research, there are actionable hacks to navigate and bypass the circus.
Let's examine the sunset swings.
Oh, the sunset swings. Everyone listening has seen this photo on their feed. A beautiful, serene silhouette of someone swinging gently over the ocean as the sun drops perfectly below the horizon. It projects absolute, unbothered peace.
The physical reality behind the camera lens is intensely jarring. To get that photo, you are standing in a sweaty queue of 40 other tourists all clutching their phones. You are paying about $3.30 to a local guy holding a literal stopwatch.
Wait, a literal stopwatch?
Literal stopwatch, who gives you exactly 90 seconds on the wooden swing before screaming next. Yeah. All while aggressive, deafening techno music is blaring from the beach club directly behind you.
It is a completely manufactured, high-stress circus. But here is the massive aha hack from the field reports. If you want that serene sunset, you refuse to play the game. You rent a bicycle for $3.30 for the entire day.
I like this.
At 5 p.m., you ride completely away from the central hubs to the deep northern beaches of Gili Air. You lay down a sarong on the sand for absolutely free. You are entirely alone. The water is completely still. The sky turns this incredible shade of purple, and you can watch the massive, imposing silhouette of the Mount Agung volcano over on Bali. That is the authentic experience you were looking for.
That exact same dynamic of manufactured chaos applies to the marine environment. The marketing brochures promise an intimate, spiritual encounter with nature.
Right.
The reality of booking a ticket on the large public snorkeling boats is a mob scene. You are herded onto a wooden deck with 50 other people, all wearing bright orange life jackets. When the guide spots a single sea turtle, 40 people violently thrash into the water at the exact same time, kicking each other in the face with their fins and completely terrifying the animal they came to see. It's an aquatic mosh pit.
So what's the hack to bypass the mob, the sunrise shore swim?
Tell me about it.
At exactly 600 a.m., before the boats even start their engines, you walk right into the water at Turtle Point on the northeast corner of Gili Islands. You rent a mask for $2 the night before from a local shack so you are ready to go.
You just walk in?
You step into the chilly morning ocean and you float completely alone in the silence above a massive sea turtle eating seagrass just meters from the beach. Total, absolute peace. And you saved yourself the $10 boat ticket and the massive stress of the crowd.
And finally, let's analyze the famous seafood night market. It is pitched heavily in the guidebooks as an authentic culinary journey. The reality on the ground is heavy, stinging smoke, intense crowding, and highly aggressive upselling.
Yeah, they really push you.
You are constantly pressured into buying massive, imported tiger prawns that have been sitting on melting ice in 30°C heat for 6 hours, and you are paying a massive premium for the privilege.
The hack here goes right back to the local track we discussed earlier. Skip the market, find an inland family warung on Gili Air, sit on a cheap plastic stool under a corrugated tin roof, smell the freshly ground chili sambal hitting the hot oil.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
And eat a perfectly grilled piece of mahi-mahi that was literally pulled out of the ocean that morning. The total cost, $4. Exactly half the price of the chaotic night market. The quality is vastly superior, and crucially, your money goes directly into the hands of a local family instead of a commercial cartel.
We've laid out the financial costs, the crowd dynamics, the crumbling infrastructure, and the compromises required to exist here. This brings us to the final verdicts of our deep dive. Synthesizing all of this complex information, what does this actually mean for you, the listener?
Let's give them the hard, unfiltered truths. Based on the data, who should absolutely, unequivocally skip the Gili Islands?
Two specific groups should immediately look elsewhere. First, survivalists and tight-budget backpackers. The baseline logistical cost of just physically getting to the island safely, combined with the cartel pricing on physical transport and the heavily inflated cost of imported groceries, will break a tight budget within days.
It's just not worth it.
You will spend your entire trip stressing over money, sweating in cheap dorms without backup power, and eating instant noodles. It is simply not worth the financial anxiety.
The second group that needs to skip it, families with young children. As we discussed, there are 0 pediatric hospitals. The horse carts are fundamentally unsafe. The boat transfers are highly unpredictable. And the complete lack of motorized transport makes managing exhausted kids in the tropical heat a massive logistical nightmare. Save yourself the stress. Just don't do it.
Now, flipping the lens, who should actually go?
The comfort travelers. This is a clear, definitive yes. If you have the financial capacity to spend $100 to $160 a night securing a solid mid-range property with a reliable backup generator to weather the blackouts, and if you commit to renting a bicycle on day one to escape the harbor clouds and explore the quiet inland paths, you will have a fantastic, memorable time.
For luxury travelers, however, the verdict is a hesitant maybe. If you're spending upwards of $300 or $400 a night, you need to deeply understand that you are still highly vulnerable to the macro infrastructure failures. The romantic charm of a no-car island fades incredibly quickly when your five-star room service is delayed by 2 hours because the hotel is relying on a slow horse cart to deliver their food supplies.
The infrastructure reports are blunt here. Unless you specifically demand immediate walk-in access to warm ocean swimming directly from the front porch of your villa, you are significantly better off taking that $400 a night budget and going to a place like Uluwatu in southern Bali. There, you get flawless, reliable five-star infrastructure, paved roads, and world-class culinary options for the exact same price point.
And finally, there's a fascinating, heavily debated split verdict in our sources regarding digital nomads and long-term solo travelers.
Yeah, this is a real heated debate in the nomad community. One side argues the pure economic data. The geo-arbitrage is terrible.
Explain geo-arbitrage real quick.
Geo-arbitrage being the practice of earning first-world currency while leveraging third-world living costs. The argument is that you are paying highly inflated rent for a volatile 20 megabit internet connection that drops multiple times a day whenever the fragile power grid fails. Plus, having to coordinate a boat transfer just to do a visa run back to the mainland immigration office is a massive time-consuming logistical headache.
But the opposing view in the research completely discards the efficiency metrics and focuses entirely on the human element. The argument is that the spotty Wi-Fi and the power cuts simply don't matter when the local community is this strong.
It's about the people.
If you stay on Gili Islands for more than 2 weeks, you break past the tourist veneer and integrate into an incredibly tight-knit, welcoming community of long-term expats, locals, and guide instructors. It offers a level of genuine human connection that you simply cannot find when you are isolated behind the walls of a massive, heavily gated villa in Bali.
It really comes down to a philosophical question of what you value more. Flawless fiber optic internet and hyper efficiency, or a community that actually knows your name at the local war room. But if you are listening to all of this heavy logistical reality and thinking, okay, the Gilis are definitely 100% not for me, we promised you escape hatches.
Yes, the alternative.
2 alternative regional destinations that might match your exact vibe without the systemic headaches.
The first alternative escape hatch is the neighboring island chain of Nusa Lembongan and Nusa Penida. You choose this option if you want dramatic adventure, massive cliff landscapes, and cheap, reliable motorized access.
The logistics here are vastly superior for a short, efficient trip. It's a reliable fast boat directly from Sanur in Bali. It costs $20, and the crossing takes under 40 minutes.
That's super quick.
You step off the boat, you rent a scooter for $5.30 a day, and you have total autonomous freedom to explore the entire island.
The trade-off, however, is significant. You completely lose the relaxed walkability of the Gilis. To see anything, you have to navigate treacherous, steep, poorly maintained scooter roads alongside aggressive traffic. Furthermore, the ocean power around the Nusa Islands is notoriously terrifying.
Oh, it's very dangerous.
The currents are incredibly dangerous, making casual beach swimming highly hazardous. It is a stunningly beautiful landscape, but it requires serious physical caution and competent scooter skills.
And the second escape hatch, Gili Asahan, also known in the region as the Secret Gilis. This is for the hardcore, uncompromising isolationist. If you want to experience what Gili Trawangan was 30 years ago, before the gentrification and the cartels, this is it.
It requires significant logistical effort to reach. It involves a 2-hour drive south through the mainland of Lombok, followed by negotiating a small local wooden boat crossing. But the reward for that effort is absolute, profound silence.
Just you and nature.
You get access to the best untouched, pristine coral reef systems left in the entire region, and there are absolutely zero beach clubs or techno music.
You can rent a basic, beautiful wooden bungalow on the sand for $40 a night. A massive, locally caught seafood dinner cooked by your homestay family is $6.50. But be warned, the isolation is real. There are 0 ATMs on the island. You are completely off the grid. The cost of access is high in terms of your time, but your daily financial burn rate once you arrive is minimal.
If we pull all of these threads together, summarizing the core mission of our analysis today, Being well-informed doesn't just mean memorizing a list of prices or
Mhm.
knowing which fast boat to book. It means looking critically past the carefully curated social media aesthetic to truly understand the living, breathing, mechanical reality of a destination.
Exactly. The Gili Islands aren't some broken dream or a giant scam. They are just a highly complex, fragile ecosystem undergoing incredibly rapid, aggressive change. You have 15,000 people a day trying to experience a simple, off grid life on tiny sandbars that barely possess the underlying infrastructure to support their own local populations.
Navigating that successfully requires a modern traveler to be highly adaptable, situationally aware, and deeply respectful of the physical and cultural constraints of the environment.
Which leaves me with a thought I really want you, the listener, to mull over as we wrap this up. We started this hour by picturing that ultimate escape, the untouched, pristine, car-free paradise. But digging into all this data makes you wonder,
All right.
if the entire appeal of a destination is that it is untouched and simple, does the very act of a million people traveling there every year to experience that simplicity ultimately mechanically guarantee its destruction? Are we literally loving these fragile paradises to death, or do we just need to drastically adapt our own expectations of what a modern paradise actually looks like in 2026?
It's a critical, profound question for any modern traveler to ask themselves before they click book on that ticket. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you take these insights, look at your own upcoming travel plans with a much more critical, curious eye, and always look past the filter. We'll catch you on the next one.